In today's video, I'm going to install this AeroExhaust 5050 XL muffler on my Prevost XLII-45 with the Detroit Diesel Series 60. Sometimes there's a modification you do because there's a technical reason for it or you're trying to repair something, and sometimes it's just because you want to. To my knowledge, there's nothing wrong with the muffler on my Prevost. However, it is extremely quiet. I do like to be able to hear my engine a little bit, and I've had good luck with these AeroExhaust 5050 XL mufflers before. I had one on my previous RV and I was happy with how it sounded. It also had a significant reduction in back pressure and EGT from stock. I don't really think that there's an EGT problem on this engine. It's a 500 horsepower, 12.7 liter Detroit Diesel Series 60. But looking at this muffler, you can see through the entire thing straight through. It still does a good job of muffling things, and it's a reasonable volume, so I've been happy with this on my previous RV. It should be a simple install, and I think I'll be happier with the end results. So let's take a look at what we have to do here. Note that what I'm going to show you here applies if you're just going to replace the muffler with another factory one. It's really a pretty easy setup. So let's take a look. So my Prevost is on a motorhome chassis, and the reason I mention that is that since the rear wheels are a little bit further forward, you have this access door here, which gets you right to the exhaust elbow that goes down to the muffler. If you have an entertainer chassis or a seated coach chassis, I'm not sure how that changes things, so just be aware. But if you take a look, you've got really easy access. You have there's this clamp right here coming out of this 45-degree elbow, and from there it goes straight down into the muffler. Underneath you can see the largest muffler that I have ever seen, and just one thing to note, coming out of the muffler, you've got this 5-inch tip that kind of goes up a little bit to help your departure angle some, and then it angles downward. So from behind the bus, you actually don't even see your exhaust pipe, which is just fine. I'm going to plan on reusing this tip on the same muffler, but then what you have is you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts that you have to take off. You have it on this side, and then you have the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get these off. I've been letting them soak in some penetrating oil, so hopefully they will come out without too much difficulty. Well, that was an extremely easy removal. Everything came off really simply. So now that we've got this off, let's take a little bit of a look at what we've got. So I bought this 90-degree elbow. I have links to all the parts that I've bought in the comments, and this basically lines up perfectly with the center line of this existing muffler. So I think that this will work out just fine to basically go back up into the hole on the exhaust side where it was. Then comes the muffler and the rest of the length. I took the exhaust pipe off of the old muffler and put it on, and let's see if I can show you this here. If you take a look, you can see that the muffler itself is maybe a little bit smaller than the old one. When you add in this elbow, which is actually going to have to come on from this side, and I think what I'm going to do is just cut off the flanged portion, because the inlet is designed for the 5-inch pipe to go on the inside, not this outer portion. That should work out. It should get to about here, but I'm probably then, I guess I'll see. I think I'm going to have to cut off some of the tip to make all of this fit. Let's go ahead, get out the chop saw, start out by getting this end off of this pipe, make sure that everything is ready to go in, and then we can at least test fit this onto the bus and see what that looks like. Okay, I'm ready to get this in. So what I did was I cut about 8 or 9 inches off of the end of the tip, and so now it will fit just fine in the area. There's enough clearance that I am not worried about it hanging down too far and dragging. If it's dragging, then I'm close enough to the ground that the rest of the rear end of the bus is dragging, and that's a problem. Up here, I've just got the 90-degree into the muffler with a standard U-clamp. I need to order another one of those for the front. And then what I did was I painted some copper anti-seize around the joint there to hopefully help keep it sealed. It looked like there may have at some point been some exhaust leakage, so this might just help a little bit and also make sure it comes apart easier. So we'll get it in. We'll get this lap clamp tightened down, and then from there it's a matter of taking a look at it and seeing what I need to make for mounts to hold the muffler up in place so that it's well supported. So I'm working on getting the muffler set up and secured to the bus. So I've got it just jacked up with the floor jack about where I want it. The old muffler sits pretty high, and I want to keep this one doing the same because there's not a whole ton of ground clearance back here, and so I don't want anything dragging if I can avoid it. So what I've done here is I've taken these stock muffler mounts and I've tilted them inwards a little bit, both here and on the other side. And so then what I did was I just took a 5-inch U-bolt or muffler clamp, which I'm going to need anyway to secure the tailpipe to the muffler. And so I cut these pieces of angle iron out, got the angles about right, and see if I can hold this up here with one hand. You can see this works pretty well. So I'm going to finish the welds on them, and then I'll drill the holes that go through the original mount so I can bolt these up properly. And then we'll see if I need to do the same thing with the back. I think I will, because there's a flexible coupling that goes between the turbo outlet and the rest of the muffler, and I don't want it wobbling around a lot. So I'm probably going to have to do the same thing back there, but let's see how this thing goes, and then I will move on to the front. Here at the front of the muffler, towards the front of the bus, I added this additional brace that goes to, again, the stock mount here. Part of why I like using the stock mounts is that it's got the rubber isolator up top, so it gives a little bit of freedom of movement. But I did it for two reasons. One is that I figured that just having the muffler dangling on this side wasn't going to work very well, but also in the position that I had gotten it welded into from the back, it was actually touching at the hole here on the inboard side. So that's not what you want. You want it to be centered so that it's not rattling. And this is good. It's got a nice solid foundation to it, not going anywhere. So now I'm just going to need to start up the bus, and then we'll drive it some and see what we think. I'm back from my trip after having installed the new muffler. My expectations were that I was going to be able to hear the exhaust a little bit more than I was previously. The reality is, up front in the Prevost, I don't notice all that much of a difference. However, I can also say that behind the bus, I don't notice all that much of a difference either. I did notice a slight increase in engine sound from previous, but it didn't seem to be all that much just walking around when it was idling. The biggest difference that I noticed sound-wise is that I can hear the turbo more, which makes sense because this muffler, being a straight through without any kind of restriction is probably going to let more of those high frequency vibrations through. In my experience on other vehicles that I've put this on, you do end up hearing the turbo a little bit more. So if you're trying to get some more sound out of your engine, this is probably not going to do a whole lot for you. However, the other thing that I was doing this for was to try to reduce EGTs. I don't have an EGT gauge, but I do have pretty good confidence that this muffler should reduce the EGTs versus the stock one, which is going to be significantly more restrictive. And even though I don't have a way of measuring the EGTs, I still am pretty confident that it's going to help in that regard. If you're leaving your engine stock, this probably doesn't matter. The engines in these buses routinely go to 800, a million miles, and do just fine. So you're probably not going to necessarily see additional longevity with it. Normally on these sorts of engines, when you start worrying about EGT is when you're going to turn up the horsepower and work the engine harder than stock. That's something that may be in the future for this, but either way, I'm happier having a little bit more to sound, hearing the turbo a little bit more, and knowing that I probably have lowered my EGTs a little bit. Another reason that you may want to go for this muffler is for a cost savings. This is about a $250 muffler. The stock one is going to cost you significantly more than that if you're going to buy it. So you could still save money if your muffler had rusted out and you needed to replace it. So overall, I wouldn't necessarily say that this is a worthwhile upgrade or modification, but it is something that probably has its best value for you if you have a bad muffler that needs to be replaced. Hope you found this video interesting. Leave any questions down below in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching.